Hey, it's Mike from DirtyBike, and we are here today to help you install your primary belt to chain conversion kit on Sur-Ron Ultra Bee. So before we get started, we'll go over to the bench and we'll see what's in the kit and what tools you need to do the job. So let's see what's in the Ultra Bee 420 primary belt to chain conversion kit from DirtyBike. Inside we get instructions, tell you which way to put it on. Oh, a nice keychain. We'll put that on the bike. A sticker and the drive sprocket, spacer or a shim, a chain cut to the right length, sealed X-ring chain, and the rear sprocket. And the instructions will tell us put the shim between the motor and the primary sprocket, and this one, the actual lettering goes in towards the engine. If you ever put towards the motor, if you ever put on one of our kits before, the numbers always go out. On the Ultra Bee, the long flange and the numbers go towards the motor, so it goes on like this. If you have troubles with your woodruff key, we have new woodruff keys in stock, and then you put the original nut and washer on it. So the tools involved in replacing this, these are the tools necessary to replace this. You'll have, let's start from this side, a 3 Allen, a 4, a 5, or really a 4, 5, and a 6, yes, and a 6. To get the rear wheel off, if you choose to take the rear wheel off, you'll need a 27mm socket and a ratchet and possibly a breaker bar, because they do put them on there very tight, and they should be on there very tight. A 10 wrench, a 12 wrench, an 8mm Allen key, either a key or on a ratchet is fine. A regular one of these would be fine. And then one of the bizarre tools is a 7mm Allen. It's not very common in motorcycles, but the 7mm Allen is for getting the suspension triangle out. 14mm socket to get the shock bolts out, and then a hammer or two. I like rubber hammers, and a dead blow will work. To help this job go along smoothly, we're using the DirtyBike Swingarm alignment tool. We'll show you how to use that, and this is how it comes. Swingarm alignment tool. It's pretty cheap. I think it's 12 bucks, and it will makes the job a lot easier. All right, let's get started getting the subframe off and the rear wheel. Rear wheel doesn't have to come off, but it makes it a lot easier to do. Now we can get down to the nitty-gritty. We're taking the shock off. I'm going to take the shock completely off. You don't have to, but it makes it easier for you to see what's going on. You can sort of lay the suspension linkage out of the way by just taking off these two. But I'm going to go ahead and take off a third bolt and the top of the shock and remove the whole shock and remove the 2 plastic pieces. Let's get going. These are the strange ones. That is a 7mm Allen, very odd. Comes out with the bushing and the washer. Make sure you don't lose those. They need some lubrication when they go back in, and we'll go over that. The shock and the whole linkage just comes out. We'll set that aside. Pull 3 bolts and hold this cover on, plastic cover, just to make sure debris doesn't fly off your chains or your belt. 3 screws that hold it on. The other is in from this other side underneath. Third bolt is underneath. and then the cover just comes off. Finagle it, rip it out, and now we can see your secondary chain. Matter of fact, we're going to take this off a little bit because before you get started, we probably should have done it before we took the rear wheel off. We need to break the motor nut loose. So this is a 17mm nut. I am going to use, if you leave the rear wheel on, you can use a big breaker bar with the brakes applied and move it. I'm just going to hit it with giant impact, only to come off. Don't put it on with this. You could break things and damage the motor. I'm going to zap it real quick. And there she is. She's off, so that's good. All right, and there's a washer on there too. Needs to come off. Set it with the nut. All right, so now we need to loosen the swing arm pivot shaft. Allen. And luckily Sur-Ron has captured the bolt on the other side, so it's not going to need to be held. It comes out. And now we're going to show you a new tool that we have. It is the swing arm alignment tool. This tool helps you push this shaft out, and it holds the swing arm in place. So if you place it on here, it fits inside. You need a little tapper influencer. You just push it out a little bit. Now that's going to lock. You leave it there because it's going to lock the swing arm in place. All right, so we've loosened the swing arm pivot shaft and we put the tool in the other side, but before we pull it out, let's loosen the motor. A little bit. Loose. All right, and then we'll loosen the adjustment. The Ultra Bee has this nice adjustment, so you loosen the lock nut, the locking nut, there you go, and then you can loosen the adjuster. And that allows the motor to loosen up. All right, so be able to move the motor back. There we go. And then maybe we can get the belt off now, but we can actually pull the whole shaft out. So now we can continue to pull the shaft out. You don't want to pull it out all the way, just far enough where the jack shaft comes loose. There we go. Now we can take it off the belt and remove the jack shaft. Now she's out and off. All right, so now that the jack shaft's out, then you want to inspect your bearings inside there, make sure they're smooth. If not, we sell a whole bearing and seal kit and one to get through there. We're going to go to the bench and we're going to replace your belt pulley with the supplied 420 sprocket on here. And we're also, you need to look at your final drive sprocket. These things cup out quite a bit and they can get, I would recommend replacing it while you're in there. We also sell those at DirtyBike.com, American Sur-Ron. But getting these bolts out can be tricky because they use a lot of Loctite and they're very long, and you need to have a quality Allen wrench, like a Snap-on or a Mac or Matco, a professional grade Allen wrench, or you'll strip these out. Even with a good Allen, I stripped a couple of them out because I didn't use heat the first time. So at eDirtyBike.com, we also sell bolt kits to replace all of these bolts with, and they're 18 stainless steel bolts. So let's go to the bench and see about getting these two things off. All right, now we got the jack shaft out, over to the bench. A vise really helps with this because we're gonna have to loosen these 6 bolts. So I like to clamp it in there. Try not to damage the aluminum. I clamp it on the other sprocket, which we're gonna replace anyway, just so it doesn't turn. Doesn't have to be real tight. And then break these bolts loose. Now they do have a lot of Loctite on them, so they're gonna be kind of difficult to get out, but just remove. Boy, they put a lot of Loctite on there. Sur-Ron is a big fan of Loctite. They apply it to a lot of the bolts, and it can be a real pain. See, look at all that. It's a brand new bike. It's all Loctite. There. So make sure your tool is inserted all the way before you try to break it loose. And if it doesn't come loose, a little heat always helps. And remove the pulley. Look at your little surfaces here, make sure they're clean, blow them off. Now we can install our sprocket. Doesn't matter which way, it's flat on both sides. We're going to push it in there and line up the bolt holes, and then we have not been including Loctite in our kits, but we will start now because it is necessary to do this job. And if you don't have any Loctite, we'll supply a little 243, just one drop is fine. UV drop. There we go. And install it. We got one drop of blue Loctite on all of these, and we're going to install it, and that will be it. Good to go. All right, so now we have the sprocket installed on the jack shaft. The bearings are good. If they're not, replace them for sure. Everything's fine. We have the Swingarm pivot shaft holding in the swing arm this side, and the tool still holding it there, so it's holding the swing arm in place. So all we have to do is put the jack shaft in place and then push the shaft through. So we will wrap the chain around it, find its home. All right, and also make sure that there is lubrication on your shaft. This is brand new, so it's got a bunch of grease on it, as you can see from my hands. But if not, lube it, and that's really just for corrosion. So now the shaft is in place. You have to push the shaft through and align it. You may have to wiggle a little bit to get it aligned. Once it's in there, tap it through, and the tool comes out. Another thing to tighten. Jack shaft. Okay. Now let's go back to the other side. So now we can pull this pulley off. This bike is pretty new, so it's going to come off pretty easily. But you could actually use these two bolts and have a little puller that pulls it out. So we'll pull that aside. And then remove the woodruff key. If it doesn't come out with the pulley, you can use a little screwdriver or pocket screwdriver and just sort of sprocket out. Let's put the spacer shim in there, and we install this sprocket like it says, with the long flange and the lettering towards the motor. Go in there, line up the holes, and install keyway. Now the nut and the washer, and we can hand tighten this until we get the whole machine together with the rear wheel on, and then we can actually get a wrench and torque this down. Don't forget, don't leave it loose like this. If you want, you can give it a little zap, but I hate zapping on electric motors, to get it a little bit tighter. Now we can install the chain. The X-ring chain. Chains right now, we don't have, we're going to have a little grease packet in there for you. They're coming, haven't arrived yet, but I would recommend a little bit of grease on the master link. But let's install the chain first. And I'm going to put it up here where I can get to it, maybe like right about here. Wrap it around the front sprocket. And if there's not enough room like this, the motor probably has to be adjusted and loosened so we can move it back a little bit. Motor's loose, and we'll loosen the adjustment even more, and move the motor as far back as we can get it. All right, snug this up just to hold it there. Now, that's in. So now we get the master link. Here we're going to make sure there's 2 O-rings on this side, install them. More O-rings. Or X-rings, I should say. These are X-rings because they're shaped like little X's. And then the clip, the outer plate. And then sometimes it helps to compress it a little bit to get the O-rings compressed. Oh yeah, that's happy. And it's very important that you put the clip on the correct direction. As the direction of rotation is this way, right, because it pulls the tire this way, it needs to be on like this with the gap towards the back. If you put it on like this, it could rub something up here and hit the clip and spit the clip off, and that's a bad day. Nobody wants to be digging around looking for the clip. So always install it in the with the round part in the direction of rotation, like this. On, and then you can use a pair of pliers or whatever you'd like to snap the clip into place. And make sure that it's nice on there and nice and tight. It's all good. All right, now we need to do the adjustment. That is a little bit loose, but not too much. So we're going to loosen the motor bolts. All 3 of the other ones are already loose. We're just using this one to keep the motor intact. And you always, on these, a little more slack is better than not enough. Whenever you hear somebody complaining that these things are too loud, they usually have it way too tight. So there's quite a bit that's a little bit loose, but we're going to leave it like that until we can put the rear wheel on and turn the motor, because you need to check this in several different spots and find the tightest spot on there, and that's where you make your adjustment, your 5 to 8 millimeters of play. So let's just snug it, and we'll leave that like it is for now until we get the rear wheel back on. All right, so now that we have the kit installed, we're going to reinstall the suspension, the cover, and the rear wheel, and it's all just the same as this assembly in reverse order. So let's get to it. Suspension bushings, put a little grease, a little dabadooya, a little grease in there, and replace the bearings on the Light Bee with a bushing on the Ultra Bee. We also sell all of the cageless needles, which will go in another video. We'll do that. We have cageless needle bearings. That's tricky, very tricky installation, and all of the other shop bearings for the jack shaft and the other components. Okay, let's lift the bike up a little bit. So we're going to do our adjustment on our secondary chain. Does need a little bit, but we're going to focus on the primary right now. We're going to spin it until we find the tightest spot. It's pretty even. I don't see anything, so I'm going to go a little bit tighter. Let's get a 10 wrench to loosen this. It's loose. That might be okay. You could use it a little bit tighter, but definitely spin it. Don't just do one adjustment. Spin the tire. Just same with your rear tire, with your rear chain. make sure you find the tightest spot on it and adjust it there, which that's pretty much the tightest spot, and that is pretty good. That's about 4 or 5 millimeters, but as long as it's at the tightest spot. Now we need to tighten this nut. Don't forget to do that. But let's go ahead and tighten all 4 motor mounting bolts, and then we'll check the alignment, the adjustment again, because sometimes it does change when you tighten the motor up, because it moves the motor a little bit. All right, and look at our adjustment again. And go a little bit tighter. It's a little bit loose, especially a brand new chain. A brand new chain is going to stretch a tiny bit whenever you first get it out there. So let's loosen the motor again and tighten it up a little bit. So take your time. I know it's going to be, you want to go ride, but you need to get this adjustment right. Too tight and it'll make a lot of noise and a lot of heat, and it will damage not only the chain and the sprockets, but it'll damage, could even be the motor or the jack shaft bearings. If it's too tight, it's going to be pulling on the bearings a lot, and it could damage them. So now, loosen that and tighten it a tiny bit. Maybe a tiny bit more. Throw the wrench on the ground. I'm going to call that pretty good. I'm going to leave it like that. It's a little bit loose. Give it a tiny tweak, and then we'll tighten it down, because it did seem to tighten up as we tighten the whole motor. All right. Boy, I just saw it move. All right, I'm going to give it a little bit more. Play with it, get it right, and it'll last a lot longer. All right, let's check one more time. See, that's about right. That's the tightest spot I can find, and it's pretty, just barely any slack. Turn a little bit more, and it gets a little looser. So just find the tightest spot and make sure you have a little bit of play. That's a little tight, but we're going to let it go because it's a brand new chain. It's going to break in. So that's it. Making sure the adjustment. Let's tighten up this nut. You can, while we have the rear tire, we can hold the rear brake and we can torque this nut to spec. All right, get the torque wrench on there. We're going to hold the rear brake, and we're going to have to hold the rear brake, and there we go. It's a locking nut down there. Adjustments made. Remember, this chain does need lubrication. I know it's an X-ring chain, but all chains need lubrication. I lube them every ride. Every time you lube your rear chain, lube the primary drive chain also. So that's the installation of the DirtyBike primary chain drive kit. All you have to do is put the subframe on and you're ready to ride, and the motor cover. So stay tuned to the YouTube channel, and we'll do a lot more installation videos, and leave comments down below on what you'd like to see us present. Be cool.